Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This happened about 10 years ago, during what was supposed to be the happiest time of my life. My then fiancé and I had been planning our destination wedding for over a year. We chose a beautiful resort in Hawaii, and many of our friends and family were excited to join us for the celebration. Since we had such a large group booking flights together, the airline offered us a complimentary upgrade to first class as a courtesy. My fiancé and I were thrilled. It felt like the perfect start to our wedding journey. We were assigned seats, 4A and 4B, a nice window and aisle combination. When we boarded the plane, though, we immediately ran into a problem. There was a couple already sitting in our seats. I politely told them they were in our seats and showed them our boarding passes, expecting a simple mix-up that would be quickly resolved. The woman just looked at me and turned away. Her husband barely acknowledged us. When I insisted again that these were definitely our seats and asked them to check their boarding passes, the woman flatly refused to move, saying these were perfectly good seats and they were staying put. I didn't want to create a scene, especially since this was the start of our wedding trip. I flagged down a flight attendant and explained the situation. She checked everyone's boarding passes and discovered the couple was actually supposed to be in seats 1C and 1D. The flight attendant told them they needed to move to their assigned seats immediately, but the woman refused again, saying they were comfortable where they were. When the flight attendant explained that this wasn't optional, the husband became aggressive, telling her to just deal with it. To defuse the situation, I offered to swap seats with them. The flight attendant wasn't happy about it, but she agreed to officially document the seat swap. She even brought us champagne as a thank you for being reasonable. Just minutes later, another couple boarded. They had also been assigned seats 4A and 4B, the ones we'd originally had. It turned out they had actually paid for first class, while both our upgrade and the other couples were complimentary. The flight attendant asked the couple we'd swapped with to give up those seats. That's when things got interesting. The woman and her husband tried to move their bags to the overhead compartment above our new seats in row 1. When the flight attendant stopped them, explaining that they had officially swapped seats and their only options now were coach seats, the woman became hysterical, screaming that this was ridiculous and refusing to go to coach. The couple caused such a scene that the captain had to come out. He gave them an ultimatum: either move to coach or take another flight. They eventually moved to coach, but the woman was sobbing dramatically the whole way back. A few hours into the flight, I was sleeping peacefully when someone grabbed my shoulder and tried to yank me out of my seat. It was an older man, clearly drunk, who turned out to be the woman's father. When I stood up to defend myself, he actually tried to punch me. He was so unsteady that he barely touched me, but an air marshal immediately appeared and removed him from first class. 30 minutes later, the woman came charging up the aisle, screaming at the flight attendant and trying to grab her. The air marshal had to drag her back to coach 2. When we landed, the police were waiting. They boarded and arrested both the woman and her father. They were supposed to be staying at our wedding resort. One of their relatives later told our guests that they spent the first few days of their vacation in jail instead. They were also banned from the airline and had to find another way home. To top it all off, we found out they were actually on their way to their own destination wedding at the same resort. The woman was supposed to get married the day after us, but instead she spent what would have been her wedding day in a jail cell. Her poor fiancé ended up having to cancel everything and deal with all their angry guests while she was detained. I almost felt bad for them, but then I remembered how they tried to ruin the start of our wedding trip. I have to share this story from when I was in my early 20s working as a manager at a movie theater. It was one of those modern places with a game room, restaurant, and even a bar. Having a bar in a movie theater seemed like asking for trouble, but most people were reasonable enough not to want to miss parts of their movie getting drink refills. This incident happened during one of my closing shifts. I was in the office counting the day's earnings and finishing up paperwork. Most of the staff had gone home except for one young usher who was new to the job. His only tasks were to check the theaters for any issues and say goodnight to guests as they left. The other manager had asked to leave early since it was a quiet night, and the last movie was already running. Just minutes after the other manager left, I got a call to come out to the lobby because some guests wanted to speak with me. When I got there, I found my usher standing with two elderly women who looked concerned. They explained their situation. There was a drunk man in their theater who was yelling at his wife, and they were worried he might become abusive. They mentioned they'd asked their husbands to step in, but the men hadn't done anything about it. I assured them I would handle the situation, and they went back to their seats. I gestured for my usher to follow me into the theater. Instead of making my presence known right away, I stood in the hallway and listened. It didn't take long to confirm what the women had reported. There was a man shouting at his wife about spilled popcorn and how she couldn't do anything right. When I spotted him, he noticed me immediately and didn't bother hiding his attitude. He rudely asked what I wanted, calling me a jerk in the process. I walked up the stairs and tried to handle it professionally, politely asking him to keep his voice down for the remainder of the movie. His response was aggressive. He proclaimed he'd do whatever he pleased. His response made me step back, and I almost slipped on the beer cups scattered on the floor. I looked at the elderly couple's husbands, who looked worried, then turned back to the drunk man. I told him he would have to leave since he was disturbing other people's experience. He stood up, and my confidence wavered as I realized I now had to look up to meet his eyes. My usher had clearly lost his nerve and backed away. The man flatly refused to leave. One of the elderly women called out from behind us, trying to support me by reminding him that I was the manager and he should listen. I again told him he needed to leave. He challenged me, saying I'd have to make him leave. I responded that if that's what it took, I would do it. The drunk put down his beer cup and rolled up his sleeves. Before he could do anything else, I shouted that we should take this outside. When I walked past my usher, I quietly told him to call the police. The drunk followed me out of the theater, getting angrier with each step. When we reached the hallway, he got closer, but I stopped him, explaining that we needed to go outside because I wasn't going to risk getting fired for fighting on the property. I pointed to the nearest exit, walking behind him as I removed my name badge and tie. As soon as he barged through the door, I quickly slammed it shut behind him. The door automatically locked, exactly as I'd planned. It took him a moment to realize what had happened. He started pounding on the glass door so hard it cracked, but thankfully the police station was right next door. They arrived within minutes, and my fake confidence turned real as they put him in handcuffs. After giving my statement and handing over the security footage, I waited until the movie ended to check on his wife. To my surprise, she wasn't concerned at all about him being arrested. She simply commented that he deserved to spend the night in jail, then walked out to her car and left him to deal with the consequences. The elderly woman who'd initially reported him thanked me on her way out. I finished my paperwork, left a note for the morning managers to check out the security footage of the incident, and went home feeling pretty good about how I'd handled everything. The theater had to replace the cracked door, but they ended up installing reinforced glass after that, so I guess something good came out of it. I hadn't planned on stopping at the supermarket that day, but my daughter's school project threw me a curveball. She needed to bring something for their International Food Day tomorrow, and she begged me to get some fancy meats and cheeses from the deli counter to make authentic Italian sandwiches. Being a single dad trying his best, I couldn't say no, even though it meant an extra stop after a grueling 10-hour shift at the hospital. Working in the emergency room had been challenging that day, with a multi-car accident keeping us busy until the very end of my shift. The supermarket was relatively quiet when I arrived, which was a relief. I headed straight to the deli counter, grabbed ticket number 87, and noticed two people ahead of me. The digital display showed 29, which was typical for this place. During slow periods, the staff usually skip advancing the numbers to save time, and most regular customers understand this. I'd been shopping here for years, ever since my wife passed away, and I had to learn how to navigate grocery shopping and cooking for a 12-year-old. The first customer was an elderly man, probably in his 70s, patiently waiting while the young girl behind the counter sliced his turkey. Behind him stood a woman in an expensive-looking blazer, clutching ticket number 86, her manicured nails tapping impatiently on the counter. She kept checking her phone and sighing loudly, as if each second of waiting was a personal insult to her. I was exhausted and just wanted to get home, but what happened next certainly woke me up. I'd seen my share of entitled patients in the ER, but this woman was about to take it to another level. The woman suddenly started complaining about the display number being wrong. She pointed out that it showed 29 while she had number 86 and demanded to know how anyone was supposed to know when it was their turn. She accused the deli girl of not doing her job properly, her voice getting louder with each word. Several shoppers in nearby aisles started turning their heads to watch the scene unfold. The deli counter girl tried to explain their procedure during slower periods, but the woman cut her off. She loudly declared that she didn't care about their usual procedures, calling it lazy and unprofessional. She even brought up a hypothetical scenario about someone with ticket 30 walking in, getting more agitated by the second. Her face was getting redder by the moment, and I could see the young deli worker's hands trembling slightly as she continued slicing meat. I caught the deli girl's eye and gave her a sympathetic look. After years of dealing with difficult patients, I knew exactly how it felt to be on the receiving end of unwarranted anger. She gave me a subtle smile while continuing to help the elderly man, who was now looking uncomfortable. The elderly man politely requested some roast beef as well. He even tried to defuse the situation by commenting on how lovely the weather was, but the woman just scoffed and continued her tirade. As soon as the elderly man left, the woman tried to jump in with her order, but the deli girl politely asked her to wait a moment. What happened next was incredible. The deli girl, with the sweetest voice possible, began clicking the number display one digit at a time. Each click echoed through the now quiet deli section like a tiny act of rebellion. With each click, the woman's anger became more visible. Her face turned red, then almost purple. Her foot started tapping on the floor, and her arms crossed tightly across her chest. She shifted her weight from one heel to the other, looking like she might explode at any moment. Several other customers gathered around to watch, trying to hide their amusement. Some were even recording discreetly with their phones. The clicking continued until it finally reached 86, and the deli girl announced she was ready to serve that number as if nothing unusual had happened. The woman ordered through clenched teeth while I struggled to keep from laughing out loud. Her hands were shaking so much she nearly dropped her wallet while paying. After finishing with her, the deli girl apologized to me for the delay. I told her she had made my day and that I would have gladly waited longer to witness such a scene. By this point, a small crowd had gathered, and several people were nodding in agreement. The woman stormed off, but she'd forgotten one of her packages on the counter. When I called out to let her know about her forgotten prosciutto, she yelled back that we could keep it, and that she'd never shop there again. The deli girl joked about how terrible it would be to lose such a customer, and we both burst out laughing. A few other customers joined in the laughter, and one elderly lady even came up to pat the deli girl on the hand, telling her she'd handled the situation beautifully. She ended up giving me the abandoned prosciutto for free, insisting that it would otherwise go to waste. When she wrapped up my order, she confided that she was studying psychology at the local community college, and dealing with difficult customers was giving her plenty of material for her behavioral science classes. We shared a laugh about that as she finished preparing my order with extra care. My daughter's Italian sandwiches were a hit at school the next day, and her class voted them the best contribution to International Food Day. I made sure to fill out a glowing customer service review for the deli counter girl, specifically mentioning her professionalism in handling difficult situations. I also spoke with the store manager to commend her excellent service, and he assured me she was one of their best employees. I've been working at this support center for vulnerable people for about 5 years now. The job itself is incredibly rewarding. I get to help people who really need it. The pay is good, and most of my co-workers are fantastic. That was until we got our new team leader, 3 months ago. From day one, she made it clear she was going to be different from our previous managers, and not in a good way. While I consistently exceeded every performance metric, we're talking about achieving 99% when the target was 50% and handling calls in 600 seconds when the target was 1500. She'd still find ways to criticize me. During one of our first meetings, she called me in to discuss my performance. When I asked if there was an issue since my metrics were well above target, she pointed out that I had missed one call out of 100 last month. I reminded her that the target was 50% and I was at 99%, but she insisted that wasn't the point and we needed to discuss why I missed that one call. This was just the beginning. One day I was running late due to traffic. Following protocol, I called in to notify them and submitted a schedule adjustment request when I arrived. Simple process, right? Not for her. She called me into her office and accused me of not following proper procedure for being late. When I explained that I had called in and submitted the adjustment request as per protocol, she demanded proof. Even after I pulled up the records and showed her both the call log and the submitted request, she wasn't satisfied. She announced that from now on I would need to call her personally when running late, even on her days off. So I started calling her at 6 a.m. on her days off when I was running late. Malicious compliance at its finest. She had this favorite saying whenever someone questioned her about previous conversations. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So I started documenting everything. And I mean everything. One afternoon, she asked me to come see her after my call. I finished my call and went to her desk. She wasn't there. I waited exactly 1 minute, as per her written policy, and returned to my desk. This happened 3 more times. Later, she messaged me asking why I hadn't waited for her. I reminded her of her own written policy that stated I wasn't to wait more than 1 minute. I explained how I had documented each attempt, including precise timestamps of when I logged out, came to her desk, waited, and returned to take another call. At the end of my shift, she messaged asking about my finish time. When I told her I had finished 2 minutes ago, she suggested having a quick catch-up. I asked about overtime pay for the meeting, but she dismissed it as silly since it would only take 10 minutes. I said if I wasn't being paid, we could discuss it tomorrow during my scheduled hours. She tried to intimidate me by threatening to make it a formal meeting, thinking she had me cornered. A formal meeting in our workplace means a disciplinary meeting with human resources. But I was prepared. I accepted her threat, telling her to make it formal with 24 hours notice and a formal invite, and told her I would bring my union representative. The next day, she actually scheduled the formal meeting. When we gathered in the meeting room with my union representative and human resources, they opened by claiming I had refused to attend multiple catch-up meetings. I carefully explained the actual situation. As my manager tried to defend her position, I presented all my evidence. Screenshots of her demanding everything in writing, chat logs with timestamps, call logs, and her messages about the unpaid meeting. My union representative addressed them with subtle sarcasm, questioning whether they really wanted to maintain the position that employees should attend unpaid meetings and face misconduct investigations for refusing. Human Resources quickly backtracked, saying there had been a miscommunication and I could return to work. I insisted on getting written confirmation that I was cleared of any false accusations and nothing would be documented in my staff file. They provided the written confirmation. The next day, we received an announcement that our team leader had decided to pursue opportunities outside the company. Apparently, using formal misconduct meetings as an intimidation tactic didn't sit well with upper management. Our new manager actually knows how to lead a team. No more 6 a.m. calls on their day off, no more nitpicking over exceeding targets, and no more unpaid meetings. Just a normal professional work environment where we can focus on what matters, helping vulnerable people who need our support. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.